In my opinion, one of the most important concepts when it comes to exercise selection is the scalability of an exercise. So let's talk about that. What does scalability mean in this context? Because scalability can mean multiple different things. So for me, this is the ability to progress an exercise from the ground to standing. Does it have the ability to transfer towards standing movement? So for example, a lot of people are given exercises on the ground that are completely different than something that is standing. Now, of course, the exercise can look different, but the intention should be very similar. So for example, if I may want to improve somebody's ability to internally rotate the hip, there are many different exercises I can do on the ground. There are also many different exercises I can do standing. A lot of people will give them stretches. They'll give them mobility drills in order to really focus on that internal rotation at the hip. But it doesn't relate to anything standing. So if I just do a hip stretch, that's not going to translate to my ability to do a split squat because it requires totally different movements. It's an integrated approach. My foot now is on the ground. My knee and my tibia need to be able to internally rotate, and my hip needs to internally rotate and then all the way up and down the chain. If I just focus on the hip in isolation, there's not going to be a lot of transferability. There's not going to be a lot of scalability of that movement. So another approach can be, well, if I see somebody who's doing a split squat, for example, and their knees caving in, their hips are turning towards the back leg, their foot is dumping in, especially as they go down into a split squat, to me, that tells me, look, they're missing hip internal rotation, especially when they're in a hip flexed position. So now I need to recreate that kind of exercise or that kind of movement on somewhere that requires less gravity. Now, if you were to go backwards from standing, you could be like, okay, you're gonna do the same split squat. Now let's try a front foot elevated. Well, that looks better, still didn't clean it up. Okay, we could do now a front foot elevated split squat with bands. You're holding onto bands. You're tying bands to the top part of a rack. That's going to unweight the descent. Okay, that looks much better, but still not clean enough. Okay, so now we could do something like a step up instead, which takes away the extension element of the split squat. Okay, still looks good, looks a little better, but still not the same. Instead, I could then go, look, let's start on the ground. Let's do a position that is going to restore that motion. And I'm going to do something that integrates the foot, integrates the knee, the hip, and the rib cage because they all integrate together to produce internal rotation. So I may do something that you can see in a lot of my programs, like an oblique sit position or a side lying split squat. Or I can do a supine hip extension on the wall, my foot against the wall. I can do all these different things. And then I can say, okay, well, I did this on the ground. Let's do something that is halfway between the ground and standing because I can't just go from ground to standing and expect this big change because on the ground, I've got so many different points of contact. My entire back is on the ground or my entire side's on the ground, my hip. I've got multiple points of contact versus when I'm standing, I may only have 2 points of contact, my feet. Now we can argue that if we add additional constraints like holding on to something, I can technically say that I'm adding more points of contact. It's not technically on the ground, which is the most relaxed, but the more closed chain I can make it, the more stable I can become. But I could do something that I like to call a high half kneeling position, where essentially I'm kneeling on a box high enough that my hips are above the foot that's on the ground. So for example, if you're in a normal half kneeling position, which is one knee down, 1 foot up, your knee and hip are going to be relatively level. And a lot of people are missing that 90 degrees of hip flexion. So they can't really get into that position. Looks like they're hiking their hip up excessively. So instead what people do is they add a yoga block. Still looks hiked. They add another yoga block. Still looks hiked. Now I like to use a low box to start. Not necessarily a yoga block, but a low box. So I can start by being over top of that foot. So now I can then do a high half kneeling cable chop position. because what the cable chop is going to do is it's similar to me going down into a position because I'm using my upper body to pull the cable towards that leg. So it would be very similar as me going down into a split squat. So now I've got a high half kneeling cable chop position that teaches my foot, knee, hip, and rib cage how to interact with the ground, but still offloading it enough that I still have a lot of points of contact. And I'm starting to reproduce some of the movement. Then I can go back to my front foot elevated split squat, maybe a heel elevated to help, holding on to bands. Could look funky, but it's what the person needs to do in order to do that. And those 3 exercises could be their warm-up. And then now when they do the actual movement, I can now maybe take away the bands, or I can leave them in, and I can get them to hold on to cables instead. They're gonna do the front foot elevated with the heel elevated cable split squat. I could also play around with the back foot to offload it, to make sure that if it's too tight of a movement, which means that if that back leg is too close to the front leg, that may be hard for people to get into that much hip mobility. So even just taking that back foot and taking a big step out. So when they are pressing off of that back foot, it's like they're doing a lateral lunge to the front foot. And so again, all these different constraints we can use to increase the scalability of a movement. So when you be thinking about how can I take a movement from the ground to standing? And then from that split squat position, how can I take it eventually from the split squat to teach them how to land properly? How can I get them to do a now quick drop position? If you're not familiar with that, that is basically taking a kettlebell and you are doing a slight clean as you drop underneath it into a split squat position. So again, you teach them how to decelerate, right? You could also do something like landing off of a box, right? So teaching them how to be able to absorb force. So you've got now this position of when they do the split squat, I see all these compensations that happen. I take a look at their hip mobility. It confirms what's happening. And then I can start to, instead of removing the split squat, let's try different split squat variations to see if it helps add additional constraints. And then we're like, okay, in your warm up, let's go back now and say, let's start on the ground, then let's go to a high half kneeling position, and then let's do a split squat position, and then let's try it again. Now, again, this is isolating a split squat as an example, but the scalability happens in every single movement. And so if I can pick a movement, so again, I've got 3 movements in my warm up. If I can pick a movement that's on the ground that has high impact on every other movement, because the reality is if they have a hard time doing a split squat with the right foot forward, they're going to have a hard time doing a squat, hard time doing a hinge. It's going to be reflective of other movements. So instead of just thinking that the split squat is an isolated movement, and yes, for some people who are deconditioned, there's a skill element at play, but if you see somebody who is high trained, they have other issues, previous injuries, and their mobility matches up with what you're seeing, then you've got enough information to be able to say, okay, we need to add some movements in the warm-up to make sure that when you're doing your split squat on your own, you have the resources available. You've got the options available. So I'm taking this movement, this first movement in the warm-up, as a high impact movement that is meant to try to address as many of the compensations as possible. And that second movement, now we're challenging gravity. We can now start to, again, can I make this high impact, but maybe a little bit more specific towards that movement? And then can I create a movement that's specific to that movement in order to, again, teach them how to move in a supported way throughout that movement? Then in the resistance training part, I'm getting them to actually train that movement. And then eventually I can get them to do some kind of speed element or deceleration element that is able to scale that movement. So I've got these 5, let's say, I've got these 3 different components, one being the warm up, one being the resistance, and then the third being some kind of speed, plyometric, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is I want to focus on the first two and then start to add the third as they get more tolerant. And to be clear, for somebody who is high trained, this could be a 1-2 week transition before we introduce some of the speed stuff. It doesn't have to be, okay, you do a whole month of this, then now we're going to add it. It depends on the person and their adaptability. So hopefully this makes sense in terms of the scalability. I talk about the scalability of exercises in my roadmap of exercise selection, and also with that framework, show you how you can progress and regress exercises based on something like center of mass, force vectors, position, shape, and a bunch of other characteristics so that you have that to use with your clients. So go check it out. Put the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, save, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.